Hey, it's me, Nalthazar, and welcome to another video. In this one, I'm going to be going over the commons, uncommons, and rares that I would classify as chase cards. Now, because these are commons, uncommons, and rares, they're not chase cards in the sense that you're going to want to go ahead and spend your mana jewels trying to get any of these, even though I suppose you can only use mana jewels on the rares and higher. But they're cards that you're going to want to keep your eye out for as you're opening packs of Ikoria. So these are all going to be brand new cards with the Ikoria expansion. So let's get into it. The first is a common. It's called Wilt. And Wilt is a spell that destroys an opposing artifact or enchantment support. At 5 mana, you should be able to cast it with any level 60 Planeswalker using a like-colored mana match, or any green walker, right? And furthermore, it's got cycling. So if you don't have a support to destroy and you need something else, you're in a bind or whatnot, you can actually just go ahead and cycle Wilt away, draw something else, and voila, it makes a card that you maybe don't need turn into something that you do need. So it's a lot like Dissenter's Deliverance was back in Amonkhet, although Dissenter's Deliverance was just strictly better. So it costs 4 mana instead of 5, and it destroys any support that isn't a Vanguard, and the cycling was initially 1 until they changed it to 2. The next card is Unbreakable Bond. So there are a few cards kind of like this, but I like that it's 8 mana to return the first creature from your graveyard to the battlefield, and then give that creature lifelink. So if you were to put this card into, say, just like a deck that you're going to be throwing creatures in the graveyard, be it with something like Gather the Pack, which is going to throw 4 creatures into your graveyard, or if you use it with Liliana Untouched by Death, or even if you use it just with Original Origins Liliana and you use your first ability to discard a creature, you can just bring that creature back. And not only are you going to be bringing it back, but you're going to be bringing it back with lifelink. So I really like that. It's really cool as a common, and I feel like this will serve a lot of newer players very well. Ram Through gives you some green removal. Green doesn't have a whole lot of creature removal. And so what's nice about this is that unlike the fight mechanic, this one has deal damage equal to the power of target creature you control to your opponent's first creature. So you're not taking their creature's power back. And on top of that, if that creature has trample, the excess damage is dealt to that creature's controller instead. It's kind of like you just get to freely hit their creature. And if you have trample, the excess damage just rolls over to the opponent's planeswalker. So this is a pretty cool card, also for newer players, but nonetheless, pretty cool. Now, this here is by far my favorite common in the set, and I actually might even like it more than any uncommon and many of the rares, honestly. So it's 5 for a 1/1 gremlin, and unfortunately, it has an activate ability of its own. So it's going to activate 2 gems to deal 1 damage to your opponent's planeswalker. But it also has, when you cast a non-creature card, destroy and trigger one of your activated gems. So if you were to use this Blister Spit Gremlin in conjunction with, say, Pyromancer's Goggles, you could foreseeably have turns where you cast a free spell with Pyromancers, and then this thing just winds up triggering both of the other Pyromancer's Goggles activations, and then you just get 3 free spells. So every turn. Granted, you'll need to have like some kind of gem conversion or something. I'm interested to see if this activates priority red, or if it just does any gem or whatnot. But this card actually has quite a lot of power potential, especially for a common. So I like that one a lot. Now, this is kind of just a better version of the gremlin. So Zerda the Dawnwaker is 12 for a 4/4, and then we need to know what the companion is for this. So as long as it's not something entirely unreasonable, companion at the beginning of combat on your turn, destroy and trigger 3 of your activated gems. Once again, if you run this with Pyromancer's Goggles, every combat you get all 3 of those gems guaranteed to activate. So let's say that you run this in conjunction with Pyromancer's Goggles and some of the finales. Boom, you get to cast 3 of that finale a turn. You name like any other like power spell, boom, you get to cast that 3 times a turn. So this is a pretty wickedly good card. There are other activate gems that are pretty strong, but Pyromancer's Goggles is definitely the first thing that comes to my mind, again, just because this is just so strong with that card. You can actually even run this with Elspeth 1, so Elspeth Sun's Champion, and then you make this the soldier token for 1, and then when Zerta attacks, it's going to destroy that exert trigger and then destroy your opponent's creature. So it'll destroy a creature every turn. There's a lot of things you can do with this. It has an incredible amount of utility, so being able to destroy all those activated gems is awesome. And then it also has, when this creature attacks, disable the first enabled opposing creature, but less interesting. Next, we've got Zenith Flare. This is a card that will be good if cycling is a thing. If cycling is not a thing, this won't be as good. But I could still see a bunch of decks using like just a number of cards with cycling. So this has deal X damage to target creature your opponent controls, and you gain X life. X is the sum of cards with cycling in your exile and in your graveyard. Having it so it's also going to be equal to the number of cards in your graveyard, it makes it a pretty strong card, just in that there are so many ways of dumping things in your graveyard. So this just turns into a basically destroy target creature and then gain X life, where X is the sum of cards with cycling in exile in your graveyard. As the game goes, if you build a deck around something like this and a few other cyclers. So this could be a really good card. Really good for turning momentum, and I definitely like that. Yorion Sky Nomad. This just gives us yet another way of flickering our creatures so that they leave the battlefield, re-enter the battlefield, and we get all of their wonderful enter the battlefield effects again. If you use Yorion, two things to keep in mind. One, it's another one of those companion cards, so we're going to have to see what is the companion requirement for this, but also, and this is really important, when this enters the battlefield, each other creature you control is exiled and then returned to play with their reinforcements. But that means that if those creatures don't have haste, when Yorion comes in, you won't be able to attack that turn. So this would be really good with another card that makes it so that your creatures all have haste. And that's just the one thing to look out for. But I mean, you use this thing in conjunction with Urza, and you're going to get extra Urza tokens. If you have Yarok down, then you're going to be getting double Urza tokens. I mean, there's a lot of different things you can do with this. Vitality Hunter. So this is a 5/6 with lifelink, which is already solid. And then activate 3 white. If this creature is not buffed, it gets +X/+X. Then your creatures gain lifelink. X is your white mana bonus. Otherwise, it gets +1/+1. And then when this creature dies, you gain X life. So here's the thing about this dude, right? Like, even if it got like +1/+1, even if your white mana bonus was hot garbage, just giving all of your creatures lifelink is pretty good. The only thing that I worry about with this card is just that because it requires it to not be buffed, and there are just so many things in the game that buff things, that it might be harder than you would think to activate this and get that trigger. But if it winds up being pretty easy to do, then this is just for new players, this is an amazing card. This will keep you in the game for a long time. Between buffing up all your creatures and giving them all lifelink, that's a big yes please. We've then got Reptilian Reflections. So this is a 6 mana support, and when you cycle another card, your first creature gets +5/+4 and gains Berserker and Trample until end of turn. Then it becomes a dinosaur. This effect can trigger up to 3 times per turn. So let's say that you cycle 3 cards. Let's say that you've got some of the cheapest cyclers, so things that cost 2 mana. Basically becomes 2 mana to give a creature +5/+4, Berserker, and Trample, your first creature. And you can do that every turn 3 times. So you can give your first creature +15, +12, Berserker, and Trample every turn with just reasonable cycling cards. So this seems like a card that's pretty strong to me. It doesn't seem overpowered at all. Having it so that the effect can only trigger 3 times per turn really helps with that, just so that you aren't incentivized to make some kind of busted cycling deck that's going to cycle like 20 cards a turn and then you kill your opponent. So I like that modifier there. Quartz Wood Crasher. Now this card is insane. So this one has like Mythic or Masterpiece level power to me, and it's a rare. So 17 for an 8/8. when a non-token creature with trample you control deals combat damage to your opponent's Planeswalker, create a Dinosaur Beast token. Then that creature gets +X. That's a permanent buff, where X is the combat damage dealt to your opponent's Planeswalker by that creature with trample during this combat. So let's say that we put, like, I don't know, Embercleave on Quartz Wood Crasher, right? So we have Embercleave down, right? And so with Embercleave down, if you're unfamiliar with it, it's right here. So Embercleave gives your first creature +2/+2 and double strike. So this thing now is a 10/10 with double strike. It hits twice for 20 damage, right? So then the first time this thing hits, it makes a token and gives that token +10/+10. The second time it hits, it's going to do another 10. It'll have done 20. But X is the combat damage dealt to your opponent's Planeswalker by that creature with trample this combat. So it should then give that next token +20. So just having this thing out and hitting once with double strike, so twice, is going to be making 2 tokens and giving them +30/+30 every single turn. So every turn that you have this thing out with double strike, even if it's Embercleave, and it doesn't have to be the mythic Embercleave. You could have something else that gives this thing double strike. You use Samut's first ability on this thing. You're giving it double strike. This thing's now going to be, and the +2/+2. This thing's going to be giving you a 30 plus whatever the base Dinosaur Beast token is. I'm going to guess maybe a 3/3, right? I mean, I think that sounds reasonable. So, I mean, you're looking at like a 36 token every single turn. On top of this being an 8/8, that's crazy strong. Like this thing is bonkers. Be very scared of this thing. And remember, Embercleave also gives trample, but like you can throw this thing in with some other critter that has trample and then just trample your way to victory. It's nasty, guys. Really, really nasty. Now we've got Methos of Neth Roy. This is an absolute baller card. So it's 8 mana. It destroys the opposing creature with the highest cost, so it's going to ignore targeting. It just destroys it. So hexproof does not get anything from this. With a bunch of things giving random evergreens and whatnot, we might see a bunch more things with hexproof. This will be a way around that. And then on top of that, adamant. So if you match a green or white gem the turn that you play this, then you also destroy the opposing support with the highest cost. So you're destroying your opponent's biggest creature and their biggest support, which is huge. I love cards that are 2 for 1. Death Sprout is an example of that. This is not black-white. It's just black, so you can only put it in a black deck. But black doesn't have ways of getting rid of supports, really. Like, it doesn't have a good way of getting rid of supports. And even the things that it does, you have Casualties of War, and that doesn't actually get rid of base supports, which is very important because that means that it can't get rid of something like Hixis that isn't an enchantment or an artifact or a land. This will get rid of that. And then you have Assassin's Trophy, but that's going to replace the support with a land. So I really, really like Methos of Neth Roy a lot. Now we've got Methos of Illuna. This one is going to copy target non-token creature. You disable that copy until end of turn and give it full mana. So right there, that makes it worse than quasi-duplicate. But then with adamant green or red, that creature gains enchanted. When this creature enters the battlefield, this creature fights the first opposing creature. So if you make a copy of some big savage monster, then that copy is going to come in and it's also going to fight the first opposing creature. So it's not only going to give you another big savage monster, but it's probably going to kill your opponent's first creature too. So that's like an added bonus that quasi-duplicate does not have. So I really like this. This is a pretty cool card. Now we got Lutri, the Spell Chaser, who is very, very aptly banned from Paper Commander, and they made it really strong in this game. So 9 mana for a 5/4, has Flash and Companion. So it really, once again, depends on what is Companion here. The paper version of this says you can't have more than 1 card with the same name in your deck, or like non-land card or something like that. But I mean, I imagine that they won't have something like that here, so I'm interested to see what they do. But when you cast this card, copy the first spell in your hand, it gains full mana. Disable that copy until end of turn. So unlike something like Repeated Reverberation or Rawl Storm Conduit, Lutri doesn't need the spell to have mana to copy it. So let's say that you have this thing and once again, I'm jumping to it, the finales in your hand. One of those like 20, 22, 25 mana bombs in your hand or whatever they cost. You play this for 9, that you get a copy of the finale with full mana. Even if you can't play it this turn, being able to play it next turn, I mean, this is such a strong card. It's really, really good. So yeah, and it's 9 mana, so for all of those decks that are like, or objectives that are like play creatures that cost 10 or less, yeah, this dude is going to be a total boss with that. Like, oh man, so good. So good. I mean, like, even if you think about it, right, let's say that you use this dude with, I don't know, something like Chord of Calling, right, or even Finale of Devastation. So you cast this dude, copy Chord of Calling or the Finale, keep that Chord or Finale just on lockdown always, and then I suppose not the Finale because you have to cast it, so Chord, and then the Chord plays the next turn, which you can use to fetch another Lutri that's then going to copy another Chord, and you just get a Lutri with Chord every single turn, and not including the Chord that you have in your hand in case you want to use it for something else. So really cool combo, a lot that you can do with Lutri, very strong Otter. And then we have Gyruda, Doom of Depths. This is another rare that looks like Mythic Masterpiece quality savagery to me. So it's an 8/8 for 16, and when it enters the battlefield, destroy the top 8 cards of each player's library. Like, that alone makes this a really good card. It's also a Kraken, which is really cool. So Tromokratus is going to have a lot of new friends in this set. This thing, and there's a Mutation Octopus dude. But yeah, this thing becomes 10 mana for an 8/8, and when this creature enters the battlefield, destroy the top 8 cards of each player's library with Tromokratus. And on top of that, it also has this companion. So once again, I know companion, it depends on what the companion is. Mill 12. So at the end of your turn, if there are 12 or more cards in, I want to say, your opponent's graveyard, you exile them, and then return the first creature that costs X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. So, I mean, it's going to be unlikely that you're going to be able to get that mill off very frequently, I think. But you're still going to be dumping a whole bunch of stuff in the graveyard for your graveyard decks or for objectives where you need to throw things in the graveyard. And then once again, I mean, if you use this thing with Liliana, you're going to go ahead and just have a bunch of things throwing in the graveyard all the time. And so you're probably going to be able to get some good stuff. By Liliana, I mean Untouched by Death. Colossification. I mean, okay. Like, let's say that you even have this be the thing that the Otter is copying, right? I mean, just a free target creature you control gets +20/+20. Disable that creature until end of turn. I mean, that's nasty. That's really nasty. I mean, if you put it on something with Vigilance or Reach or whatever, it's still going to be able to block and kill everything with its +20/+20 buff. You play multiples of this, then, I mean, 20, 40, 60, you get the idea. This is really, really strong. So, yeah, really, really strong. Boneyard, Drax. I absolutely love this card. You'll see that there are some cards that I did not include that give you like +X, they have the power toughness equal to the number of things in the graveyard. This is just better because when it enters the battlefield, it gets +X/+X, where X is the number of creatures in your graveyard. That means that every time you play one of these, you just keep stacking that buff greater and greater and greater. So just with all the things that you can throw in the graveyard, this fungus can get really strong. And on top of that, when this creature dies, you may drain 7 mana from your hand and then exile this, and target creature you control gets +X/+X, where X is going to be, once again, the number of creature cards in your graveyard. So you can use this, it's going to buff itself up, it's going to buff itself up, it's going to buff itself up, and then your opponent kills it, oh no, you now have it buff something else. Or if you use it with, I know I'm on the Liliana train today, but you use it with Liliana Death's Majesty, right? You get rid of it with her first ability, and then you drain 7 mana to just buff a creature you control. Big time. So there's a lot of stuff you can do with Boneyard, Drax. Pretty strong card. This is going to bring us to the uncommons in the set that I would keep my eye out for. So this dude is just whenever you cycle another card, create a human soldier token. I don't know that this one is going to be super powerful. I don't know how much of a presence cycling is going to have, especially because this dude is white and doesn't have blue, so you can't run it with Nissa, the cycling goddess, steward of elements. But nonetheless, last time we had a card called Drakehaven, and Drakehaven made a whole bunch of Drakes. Granted, we got a 4/4 Drake for every card that we cycled instead of a 1/1 human. But nonetheless, this still could have a very strong presence, especially with some of the other cards in the set that are like lose human reinforcements and destroy creatures and stuff. So yeah, this could be a pretty cool card. Skull Prophet. I actually really like this card for a number of reasons. One, it converts gems on its own. It converts to black or green, which is cool. But two, and more importantly, when you convert 2 or more gems to black, destroy the top 3 cards of your library. So let's say that you're running like 3 gem converters that are going to convert to black. So Castle Locktwain, Witch's Cottage, and Black Market, right? That's 3 of them. Then every turn you're going to be milling 9 cards from the top of your library. And then let's say that you trigger these activations. Half of those activations are then going to mill even more. So this is a great way of throwing things in your graveyard. And for those of you newer players that don't have as many ways of putting things in your graveyard, this is a fantastic way to do it. And it's an uncommon. 10 for a 4/2 is fine anyway. So really everything about this is good. Momentum Rumbler. This is for pauper objectives and for newer players. For newer players, like if you're in bronze or silver, I mean, heck, even maybe in gold, this dinosaur is going to be an absolute monster. You do not want to run into this at lower levels. So it's a 4/4 for 8, which is already an incredible body for 8. And then when this creature attacks, if it doesn't have first strike, it gains first strike. And then when it attacks, if it has first strike, it gains double strike until end of turn. So it's going to permanently gain first strike the first time it attacks, and then every time after that, it's going to have double strike. So basically, it's going to be 8 mana for a creature that's going to hit once for 4, and every other time after that for 8, which is huge. Like, it's really big for newer players. So if you haven't played with a newer account lately, red is strong at lower levels, and this is going to be an absolute beast. So Migratory Greathorn. This thing is here for predominantly Legacy and for like that Battle of the Four Tribes event that periodically runs around. So it's 12 for a 4/5 and mutation. So you mutate something, and then whenever that thing you cast a reinforcement for that thing, you are going to get the mutation effect, which is going to be to fetch the next land support from your library and put it directly into play under your control. So if Rupture Spire is the only land you control, you use this thing, and then you mutate something that is like really low mana, and you just keep getting mutations of that thing, and it just gives you yet another way to get more Rupture Spires. So if you're running like Scapeshift and Death Sprout, and now this thing, and then all the Rupture Spires, you're going to get like all the Rupture Spires in the world. So yeah, Legacy Pauper, Battle of the Four Tribes, this card's going to be an absolute beast. And then I think this is the last one on my list as an uncommon. It's Back for More. So it's 12, and you're going to pick one of the first 4 creature cards from your graveyard and move that card to play under your control. Then that creature fights target opposing creature. So I really like this because it brings something back, and then if you at least have big boy creatures, then it's also going to kill your opponent's creature, right? Just something that you choose. So this is another one of those 2-for-1 card options. It's another card that you can throw in with like any kind of like throw things into your graveyard. So once again, Liliana Untouched by Death. I'm actually going to go ahead and say that Liliana Untouched by Death has a lot of really cool options from this set. So I'm actually really excited to try them out with her. So I think that's the last one. Yeah, that's the last one. So I know we're 24 minutes in, so that means, oh man, you've been going for a while now, Thazar. But I wanted to make sure that I went over all the cool cards and some of the things that I've been thinking about. So let me know if there are any commons, uncommons, rares that you're excited about that I didn't touch on. And I'll see you guys for the Mythic and Masterpiece version.